I have been using Terraform at home to manage all of the different DNS domains that I use, specifically for this home lab behind me. Now, a while back, I was playing around with TrueNAS and with Proxmox, and at one point I had everything set up nicely in a VM, and then I decided to, let's redo the system, and I completely forgot to actually back up that VM, which had the latest configs. Now, luckily, I did have a sync job to copy the folder that had all of my infrastructure configuration to another folder. So today, we're going to go clean up the mess that I made for myself. So the first step in cleaning up this mess is that I need to just show you what my account setup looks like, because I use multiple AWS accounts inside my personal setup. Now, at the top level, I've got an account that I call billing that allows me to basically set up billing, and then from there, AWS organizations to manage everything else. Inside this account, I've got nothing. It's basically the account that manages all the payments for all the different accounts, and I didn't run anything in there. This is going to change soon when I roll out IAM Identity Center, because I do need to put that at the top level where the organization is, but that's for another video. So what we have here is I've got a dedicated account just for all the DNS configurations. So this is where I set up Route 53. Then I've got a registrar, which is only responsible for actually registering the domains and managing those configurations that I have. Then I've got 3 environments: the main environment, the development one, and the production. This is just a setup that I use for the different splits between, let's say, running 2 copies of the same infrastructure. Now, the main one is where I have an IAM user that I use to log in, and from there do role switching to the different accounts. And then just some other ones at the bottom that I used for consulting that I did back in South Africa years ago. And then I actually found my original AWS account that I spun up, I want to say 2010 or 2011, probably 2010. And in there's also a nice little unpleasant surprise that I have to go deal with. So let's quickly jump in and see what our code looks like. What I've done to prepare for this so long is to set up another new VM, and yes, I'll learn my lesson this time, with Terraform installed, the AWS CLI installed, and basically the code that I had on my server copied to this VM. So this is the current state, and the reason I need to fix this is if I go to my personal private GitHub repo, we can see here that the last time I touched any files was 10 months ago when I was playing a bit with Portainer, and before that it was 3 years. So this is quite old. I've been very bad. So what we need to figure out first is how do we actually set up the credentials to log into this account. If I remember correctly, and honestly, this has been a couple of years now, I have an IAM user set up on that main account. And then from there, what I do is I role switch into the DNS and the personal account to actually configure everything. So let's go see if we can find that user inside the personal account. Oh, sorry, in the main account. Okay, so let us go spelunking. I'm going to switch to my main environment over here. It should say there's an organization. That's fine. Let's go see what we've got in IAM. So I have got 2 users set up here, and they are very old. The first one is almost 10 years old, and the key age is 3,000 days. Now, that's not great. So what I'm going to do is I will generate a new API key, and then I'll go set that up on that VM, and then it will come back. Okay. Now we've got an API key, so let us jump into the code and see what is going on. So while I have the credentials configured, what I don't have yet is the actual roles in terms of the config file to get between the accounts. So we're quickly going to generate those. So let me just cheat a little bit and get this going. Okay, so let us see where we are at. Okay, so I misconfigured the credentials. Give me a second quick to go fix that. Okay, so I found that it is actually not the IAM user inside my main account. It is the IAM user inside of the top level billing account. So in theory, we should be good to go now. So let's quickly check again. Okay, so we can access the state file. So in theory, our profiles are now set up correctly. So let's quickly do a Terraform plan to see just how bad this is going to be. Okay, so what I can see here is that it's trying to generate an API key and secret. And if I remember correctly, that would be in the certbot, because I use traffic with Let's Encrypt to basically generate all my SSL certs. So let's quickly take a look over here. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So it does want to create this cert. So I'm not even certain that this is right. It should be okay, but let us see and what happens when I apply this change. Okay, So what I can see here is that apparently I've got more than one access key per user set up for this specific user already. Now I know that currently my traffic reverse proxy is working as expected. So I know that if I change this now, it'll mean that I will be losing that configuration. So instead of doing that, I am going to rather delete the access key from here and not use that. So let's get that out. Okay. Okay, so it looks like because of the current state that things are in, that it only wants to delete the outputs from our state file, which is fine. So that won't break anything. So we are fairly good to go, actually. So let's quickly take a look at what the DNS configuration is like. So Cobus.io is my main domain that I use. And in here, I have set up a Route 53 zone, along with a bunch of DNS entries to configure my mail. And the important one for our internal DNS at home is the wildcard one. So, okay, over here. So this is fine. So that is actually the internal IP of traffic. It's set to a static IP. So that's how it always does the IP lookup for that. And what I have to do now is I still see here that I reference the old mail provider that I have, and I actually switched to a different one. So I'm going to leave that for now. We can come back and clean this up. But it seems like we can at least run things now. So the big thing to do now is to make sure that we commit this and not lose it again. And I forgot to set my details. Okay, so now we're in a state where we can start making some changes and cleaning things up and also doing it properly. Okay, let me quickly fast forward and clean up all these extra users so we can get a handle on what's going on in the account. Good. Now we are mostly cleaned up. So next I'm going to roll out IAM Identity Center just so we don't have this problem going forward in the future. And as part of that, I'm going to reference back to my previous video where I use the bootstrapping approach that I took on that one. And I'm going to bootstrap this account using the same way. Now, the difference being that this is an existing account with an existing state file. So I'm going to have to massage this a bit. So effectively, I'm going to add the module, configure to match what we currently have for our state file. And then what I'll do is to import the relevant resources into the state file so we don't overwrite what we already have. Okay, now that we have our users cleared up, we can go ahead and actually bootstrap this. So what I want to do is I want to use the bootstrapping module that I showed you in a previous video and make sure that my own personal setup is also using that. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. So the first step is to create a file for it. So let's create bootstrap.tf. And in that file, we will add the same module configuration as we did in the previous one. So this is the module definition from the docs. And we are going to update this with our provider details. So let's quickly, our state file details. So let's quickly grab this, put that in there. Now we need to copy the bucket name as well as the region. And then we need to set the key to use in the S3 bucket as well as the profile to use. So let me paste that in for us. Now we can take this away again. Okay. And now we can go ahead and run Terraform init to pull down that module. Okay. So this is going to be an interesting one. So what we can see here is that we run into a versioning issue. Now, I haven't touched this Terraform code in at least, I think, a year, probably, because the last time I touched this was when I made the Docker file changes, and that was with just Docker, not the rest of the infrastructure. So what we can see here is that the error tells us that it is trying to install version 5.70 based on the requirement from our new module, but currently we are using module 3.4, provider 3.47. So to fix this, we are going to run the recommended Terraform init upgrade that will pull down the new provider. And just to confirm, if I go to providers over here, I do not specify any specific versions for the AWS provider in the previous way I had this set up. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so now before we can do a Terraform apply, because our new module actually will go and create the bucket for us, we need to first import our existing bucket. Now to do that, let's quickly get some help. So basically with Terraform, you can, if you have an existing resource, you can use the import function, and that's exactly what I'm doing over here. But I don't do it regularly enough that I can remember the exact syntax. So I'm just quickly going to phone a friend, and let's just take a look quickly at the command, import that specific module, and we give it the bucket name. Okay, that does look correct. So let us paste that in. So what this now does is in the state file, it'll actually look at what the module wants to create and then link the existing S3 bucket in the state file as that single resource that is already existing inside our state. That way we don't go and try and create a new bucket with the same name. Now we can go ahead and say Terraform apply, and then we can review what the changes are going to be. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so what it's trying to do is create an IAM policy document. This is the policy that allows read and write access to our state file resources. So we definitely want this because we want to use it in our CI/CD build later. Then it's going to create the lock table because I didn't use one before. It's going to create or add tags to the IAM policy. Then it's going to set the buckets ACL, ownership, public access, and also server-side encryption, and also enable versioning on the bucket. And then lastly, it's going to create, well, second from last, it's going to create the local Terraform, the TF file, which will be our new Terraform backend configuration file. So we need to make sure after we apply this and it creates that file, that we just remove the old Terraform-state file. Otherwise, we're going to have two backend configurations. And then lastly, it's going to create the versions.tf file, which will show the different providers that we're using, plus the versions that we want of them. Okay, this all looks good. So let's go ahead and say yes. Okay, so now we just need to remove this file because let me show you quickly. If I go Terraform plan now, it will complain because we've got two backend configurations. So let's go ahead and delete that. Okay, now I am expecting Terraform to tell me that we need to reinitialize the backend because we've changed all the configurations on the bucket and possibly even for the state file. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead and run Terraform init. So here we can see that it says the backend configuration has changed enough that it needs to know what does it need to do. So in our case, we can choose between reconfiguring the backend, which will store the current state if it was local. But in our case, we want to do the migrate state. I'm fairly certain this is due to the fact that we are enabling encryption with a KMS key versus the default S3 encryption. Okay, let's just do one more Terraform plan just to make sure that we don't have any pending changes. Okay, we are good. We are good to go. So now I am going to commit the changes. Actually, first, let's just clean up our code. I will commit my infrastructure changes. I will commit my infrastructure changes. I will commit my infrastructure changes. There we go. Okay, so now we are almost good to go. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to change from using IAM users that I'm currently have for logging in, as well as the hard-coded access keys and secrets. So I want to create identity center users for these accounts. Okay, so let's paste in. So this is basically that same module that I showed in another video, but the difference being is that I'm configuring it for three different AWS accounts. In this case, I'm using the caller identity to get the account ID that we can use further down to give the user that I create for myself access to multiple accounts. So we've got those three, and then the change is basically down here where we set up the admin account assignments. Now it's just me using these accounts, so I've only got one administrator user or group and user, and then we're going to give access to these three accounts. So let's go ahead and apply that. Okay, I forgot to install the module. Okay, now we can go ahead and apply. Yeah, now we're good to go. Okay, so this failed with an error saying that there is the list of identity store IDs is empty. Now that is due to the fact that I created my identity center in a different region to the one that I'm using to create my resources in my state file. So let us quickly sort that out. So we will need to define another provider in here. So let's add it in here. And this is going to be in the US East 1 zone, and let us use the same profile. And we are going to give this an alias of main identity center. Let's do that. Okay. And now what we can do is if I go to one of these, I'm just going to grab that as an example. And inside the module down here, what we need to do is tell it which provider to use. So after creating all of this infrastructure for Identity Center, I went and reset the password on my new Identity Center user and then logged into the AWS console using it. And this is the view that I'm presenting. So we can see that I've got access to all three of the accounts that we are going to be using. So what I need to do now is to configure the CLI. So first, let us move our old credential files. I'm going to move the config file as well as the credentials file, and I'm going to move it into my home directory just to be safe for now. And then just to double check that there's nothing inside the AWS account, we're going to, the AWS folder, we're going to run this. Okay, we are good to go. So now what we need to do is we need to configure our SSO credential set for the AWS CLI. So we're going to use AWS configure SSO. And for the session name, this is something that makes sense to you that you want to call it. So in my case, I'm going to call it personal billing because this is my personal account and it's the billing account. And then the start URL, I'm going to paste in quickly. And then the SSO region is US East 1 because that's where I set that up. And I'm going to give it the account access. And now what happens is it's going to open up a browser tab to ask you to verify that this is the, you want to give permissions. So if you look there, FM, and over here we see FM, and yeah, that looks right. So I'm going to confirm. Then we're going to say allow access, and now we can close this tab. If we go back to the CLI, we can see that we now can pick the account. So let's do the billing one first. The default region for this is EU West 1. Output format are like JSON, and this role needs to match what we have in our config for Terraform. So it's going to be main root. Okay, now that one's done. Now we just have to do it for the other two profiles as well. What you'll see is when you use the same SSO session name, it'll pick up that it's already configured. So now I can just pick the actual name over there and do the same. Okay, now we are ready to log into the CLI. So we're going to go AWS SSO login. Okay. We're going to go AWS SSO login, and then we're going to specify that profile, which is the main root. It asks you to open up again because this is the authentication flow you'll use going forward. So let's verify again. ZKHK, that looks right. And we are going to say allow access. And now we are logged in. So now we should be able to run Terraform plan. There we go. Now my Terraform at home is at least nicely configured. It's automated. Well, it's not automated yet. I still need to add a CI/CD pipeline, but I'll do that in a future video. So I hope you found this video useful. My name is Cobus, and before you go, I need 3 favors from you, please. The first is, let me know in the comments if I missed anything or if I did something completely wrong. Please roast me. I would love to learn more. And then also what you're building with AWS. Then go check out the links in the descriptions. I've added them in for where the module is, as well as the starter configuration guide for that as well. And then lastly, please hit the like and subscribe button if you want us to create more videos like this. Hope to catch you in the next one. Bye.